in having unlimited desire, and instead of getting sensible and controlling the expenditure side of their life, they get all worked up, put themselves in debt, buy more than they really need or have time for, and then they get all excited when they get laid off and have to go get unemployment and find that they're losing their house, their car, their wife, their husband, their kids, whatever. And it doesn't have to be that way. People can really live a much simpler life. But in order to do that, you've got to see things coming before they get to you. And you're not going to see that on mainstream television. Mainstream television is a following business. If you want to find out what happened last week, or if you want to find out what happened in some point in history, or alternatively, if you want to see fashion, or if you want to see sparklies, bells, whistles, trinkets that are pointless, by all means, go turn on the television. And I don't mean to diss television real bad, but I managed to get along watching maybe a half hour a day average of television, and I'd say 25 minutes of that is the opening bell discussion on some of the financial channels, and that's it. By the same token, I'm driving a beat-up 1999 Daewoo four-door that one of my daughters drove at college for a couple of years and customized all the hell and gone with bumps and dings and so forth, like kids in college will when they have a couple of drinks and go driving, right? and that car, as much as I want to replace it, I can't bring myself to do it yet. I mean, I could probably go out and buy. I called my bank, and I said to my banker, "Hi, banker, I want to buy a car. How much will you loan me?" And the banker looked at my financial stuff and said, "Oh, I don't know. You need more than 60." and I'm going, well, no. I was thinking more like maybe a Toyota Yaris or a little Hyundai, or maybe a used Porsche if I get real. But it depends on what my wife thinks of the idea, right? But I'm not thinking about going out and spending $60,000 on a car, for heaven's sakes. And yet people do that. And they don't feel at all guilty about it.
Well, that's what happened with the housing market, isn't it?
Exactly. And then everybody wakes up. See, that's where Cliff's stuff is so interesting, because it meshes. It's hand in glove with common damn sense. Common sense says, okay, I'm working for $25 an hour. Just to pull a number out of the air, right? I'm working for $25 an hour. Should I be living in a $400,000 house? How much study does this take? None. If you make $25 an hour, you're going to make about $50,000 a year. And even if you marry well and find a spouse making $50,000 a year, that's $100,000 a year. And there's some of these old formulas that came to us from the last Depression, like your house should not cost more than 2 years of income, kind of thing, right? So if you're married and you've got $200,000 of household, or $100,000 of household income, then you kind of sort of ought to be budgeting $200,000 for a house. I have a colleague I used to work with who had one of these houses near Sacramento, little McMansion kind of a thing, 5,000 square feet, real nice. But he bought it for $600. It went up in value. He refied it for $750. Took some money out to put into the business that he was working with. And nowadays, I've been watching the real estate prices. Nowadays, the poor guy is probably upside down by $200 or $300, and for all I know, may have walked away from it. That's what happens.
Yeah.
And see, that happens with cars, that happens with houses, and people end up with no resource. And what my websites have been about, Peoplenomics, every week I come out with one relatively in-depth article, and I try to get down to the heart of what to me is a burning question, like this weekend. This weekend I'm working on...
let's hold off the weekend for a moment while we take a little break.
A break.
A break.
A break.
You, broadcaster, know about those breaks. We have a caller. Important call coming in.
You'll be back right after this.
There you go.
Wait, here we are. Okay.
Now we're there?
Now we're there.
We're way
back
beyond ordinary.
with George Ure. And to continue on that line of thread we were on there, we hear in the media a lot of people are blaming the individuals who supposedly knowingly got into these bad, risky loans and should have known they were going over their head. But it was so common to have these sub-rates going on, and it was, to let more people get into buying homes. There didn't seem to be anything wrong with it. The perception at the time was the bank isn't going to offer you something that you can't afford. They're always checking your credit and all of that stuff. So how can the people really be blamed because you know how people give their power away to authority all the time? That is a problem, but that is the condition of the human state.
You're absolutely right. And that's always one of the problems when you're stuck in a mania. See, we're actually, I look at this housing thing almost like an onion. It's a mania within a mania. And let me explain. There's kind of like this great big mania that the Western world entered into when we got into, I'd say, 1820, 1830-ish, when the Industrial Revolution started spawning the whole notion of capitalism. In other words, prior to the early 1800s, it was relatively difficult to go out and be a venture capitalist, and for a number of reasons. I mean, until John Law came along with South Sea Bubble and so forth in 1720, and you had a little bit of it with the tulip craze in 1620, or was it 30, in Holland. Anyway, so you have these manias, but this great big bubble that we're all still living inside, the complete fascination with money, with financialness, with power, with status, with owning, controlling, authority over others. That bubble is still going on. Within that bubble, we've had a series of other bubbles. We had a little thing called the Internet bubble, which I wrote about a fair amount about on my website, including a paper in September of 2000 called Death by .coms. And in that paper, I said, this is a mania within this big mania here, and at some point, manias always end badly. And sure enough, it ended badly in 2000. And so, while that mania was in the process of ending, the financial industries were busily cobbling up the next bubble. And the next bubble was house flipping. So if you had gone out at the height of the Internet bubble and had taken all your Internet stock gains, you rolled those into real estate and then rolled out of those at the peak of the housing bubble in about early 2005 to mid-2005, and then put it in government bonds, you would be just so fat and happy with your financial condition today. The problem is nobody had any financial incentive to tell you, do it in advance. It's just like now, what's the next bubble? If you could answer that question successfully, you could maybe avoid going, down the tubes financially. But what Cliff's work seems to be showing is that it's not just the housing bubble that is coming home to roost now. We may actually be at the point where we're like bacteria in a in a petri dish eating agar, the nutrient base. And we may have eaten so much of the planetary nutrient base that we're going to have some die-off of bacteria, better known as humans, in order to get back into balance with things. I mean, clearly you
God, that's a fabulous analogy.
well, it's unfortunately, it looks like it's true.
It is true, but I hadn't thought of it in those terms, and it is so explicitly elegant.
I do like to be explicit. You know, we're at the point where I don't know if it's going to be you, Elena, or you, Nancy, or me, but at some point in the next 20 years, a human is going to eat the last fish and chips. Because, you know, we've mined out the oceans. Now, there may still be a fish out there, but 20 or 30 years from now, bet me that cod or salmon or halibut is going to be a protected species. We're just hauling up more than the ocean can make. And the reason that we're having to haul up more than the ocean can make is that we've got more people than the planet can reasonably support on the kind of a diet that we all seem to like, which is a fair amount of protein.
Well, yeah, particularly our country, because apparently we consume 25% of the world's everything.
Oh, yeah,
so,
and I'm down here in Hallelujah cattle country. You know, and if you don't raise cattle down here in Texas, I happen to raise goats.
So do we.
You're kidding.
Well, we have two.
What kind?
A Nubian and a one that's 3/4 boar.
Oh, okay. So if I tell you I'm a member of the American Boar Goat Association, you go, ooh, registered boar goats. Maybe you wouldn't. But I'll tell you what, goats are really cool because we've got a lot of trees on our property. And the neat thing about boar goats is they're big, relatively easy to fence. They don't like electric fences, and once they get zapped a few times, they go, oh, I guess I don't want to mess with the electric fence. And they keep your property cleared off and the underbrush down, which in turn keeps down snakes, wild animals, and all that stuff.
Yeah, we use them to mow the lawn.
No, I still have a riding lawnmower for that.
But anyway, I didn't mean to digress. It's just we have a lot of similarities going on here.
Oh, yeah, yeah. But you know how cool goats are, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you know, you can get milk and